The following video builds off my previous Tomb Raider reviews. You should check those first before proceeding. Tomb Raider: The Angel of Darkness was released in 2003 for the PlayStation 2 and Windows operating system, a 3-year gap after its predecessor Tomb Raider Chronicles. It would be the last game in the series created by Core Design before Crystal Dynamics would take over the development of the franchise. It would also be the last time this version of Lara Croft would see the light of day, as the game's critical failure induced a reboot to the franchise. Angel of Darkness had begun its development cycle sometime in 1999 while Chronicles was nearing completion. The team was intent on building the game ground up for next-generation hardware. With the increased power of the next-gen systems, ideas on how to innovate the game were thrown around en masse by the dev team. Andy Sandham recalls at one point how the game was to house several cities, all with the level of detail to match GTA. This led to ideas being scrapped and numerous redesigns to take place. While the final product never fleshed out any of the ideas in a coherent fashion, traces of the team's brainstorming are left all over the final product. Lara can now speak with the people she encounters, complete with branching dialogue options, which can lead to several different outcomes. Lara's basic skill set can be upgraded as the adventure progresses. A second character takes the playable spotlight for the first time in the series. The controls made some key changes, and the story took a much darker turn while somehow managing to sustain its T rating. Some of these concepts and ideas seem pretty compelling on paper, but this game's problem is completely in its execution. The team at Core knew they needed much more time with this game, and the final product only confirms what they knew. I'm likely going to cover most of what breaks this game as I go along, but after completing it I can say with certitude that the biggest flaw in Angel of Darkness is Lara herself. If the team had focused their efforts and ensured Lara was satisfying to control first and foremost, a good 60% of my gripes with the title would vanish. Lara makes the experience miserable. Areas that aren't necessarily bad in design suffer greatly because of how Lara controls. The game ditches the tank controls of yore and allows Lara to move freely, greatly improving her handling, at least in theory. The addition of strafing is likely how the team planned to make Lara's auto-targeting work with the new movement scheme. She can still jump freakishly high, shimmy around surfaces, crawl, go prone, roll, and sneak around, allowing her to perform silent kills. She can sprint, but the ability has to be unlocked first via the new upgrade system. She no longer has the ability to roll in the air, but she still maintains the ability underwater. She can still forward roll out of vents and shafts, preventing the need for turning around, and she now sports a grip gauge meter ripped straight out of Metal Gear Solid 2. In fact, most of Lara's new tricks involve sneaking in some form and pilfer heavily from the MGS series. She even loses her trademark dual pistols with infinite ammo despite wearing the holsters for them. Lara's interactive animations also remain largely untouched from her predecessors. Pushing blocks, climbing surfaces, and checking in cabinets are still annoyingly slow. The block pushing has improved, but not by much. Performing these kind of actions can be a bit confusing due to the new way the action button is handled. Before you would approach an object, press action, and then move around so Lara would push or pull. If you wanted to climb that object, you press forward and action at the same time. Now to climb objects, all you need to do is press forward in front of them, making Lara climb automatically. Pressing action now only initiates the pushing or pulling functions. This change seems harmless and would even seem to support some more fluid gameplay, but this change combined with other factors make controlling Lara a headache. Now I'm not a programmer. I'm sure I can never appropriately dissect what causes Lara's tics, but she has a great deal of them. The most annoying of these being how she reacts off the camera. See, you can't control it with the second analog stick because apparently these Eternal Darkness canted angles are more important. The sudden changes in the fixed camera is what breaks Lara. See, in big open areas she handles exactly the way she should. She moves where you tell her to, and she doesn't give you any of the business. When the camera makes a correction, this normally causes Lara to suddenly stop advancing forward and change direction. In cramped spaces, this makes simple tasks an absolute nightmare. All you have to do in this sequence is search the apartment for a notebook, but the simple act of running around is mangled into a test of patience. I'm forced to walk around in this area because Lara resumes tank controls in this state, making a sudden change of direction impossible. Any scenario that involves a shifting camera, and that's most platforming scenarios, becomes a little aggravating. I got better at mitigating these movement faux pas as I went along, but they're an inevitability. All that had to be done to fix this was tie camera control to a second analog stick. Lara reacts to the camera's positioning, so putting control in the player's hands would cause her to spaz out a lot less. Another annoying quirk comes from her new willingness to simply climb over objects without the action button. You'll notice this most when Lara is on narrow walkways. In this section here, I finished climbing down a ladder and wish to turn around. But for some reason, when facing this ladder, regardless of what direction I press, Lara opts to climb the ladder. If I roll myself out of it, Lara is now facing a railing she can hop over. All I want to do is simply turn left or right, but instead she'll always opt to go over the railing to her death. I don't know what it is about these surfaces. You could be pushing backwards, and Lara will just go forwards. As these sorts of ladder railway scenarios become more prevalent, this movement quirk becomes infuriatingly annoying. In the PS2 version of the game, Lara will just run in whatever direction you're holding, but on the PC version, Lara always started off with a walk before running. This became so annoying that I actually had to patch the controls to be on par with the PS2 version. So for all intents and purposes, you can treat this as a review of the PS2 version running on PC hardware. The PC likely has its own set of issues, but know that the controls were so horrendously bad that they had to be fixed outright. These tiny little quirks made Angel of Darkness a nightmare to play at some points. To make things worse, Lara's awfulness compounds on other terrible design decisions, but before we get to that, let's see what the story has to offer for the 6th chapter of The Treasure Hunter That Couldn't Give a Single Fuck. This time around, Jono Elliott takes the role of Lara Croft for one last time, and while she plays her part as you'd expect, the other voice acting in the game sits in a vocal uncanny valley. It's not campy enough to be endearing like the previous games, and not good enough to be respectable either. It just sounds like people reading lines for the most part.
Go away, I never heard of him.
Lady, no one, no exceptions. Have you heard what the monstrum does to the victims?
It's early yet? Move along, ma chère. You make the place look crowded.
Some side characters are okay, but these unskippable performances won't have you on the edge of your seat. It's a complicated story that attempts the whole murder mystery thing.
That attitude won't get you far round here, sweet thing.
Lara and Von Croy are speaking in a room, and Lara's pissed that she was left in Egypt.
You walked away and left me.
Take my hand. I can pull you to safety.
Good to see you again.
I couldn't leave you.
You walked away and left me.
I couldn't leave you.
Wow. What an asshole. He's sure abandoned you there. Even spent the duration of Tomb Raider Chronicles digging for your sorry ass, but you know, the guy's a dick.
We've found her.
The camera does some flashy cuts before we find a dead Von Croy, and Lara with blood on her hands. Lara decides to track a man named Eckhard because that's who contracted Von Croy to find 5 Obscura paintings for his nefarious plans. While this is happening, there's also a mystery involving a killer called the Monstrum. Some asshole from the Foreign Legion is there too, and this eventually boils down to a madman's convoluted plot to revive an ancient immortal race that died out a long time ago. You know, that thing immortals do. Like the game, the execution of the narrative isn't all that great. We get a few CGI cutscenes, in-game cutscenes, long gameplay segments that involve nothing more than tracking down people in order to listen to a conversation, and some of the worst gameplay to cutscene transitions I've ever seen. The one where Lara suddenly decides to change outfits for an in-game cutscene is the funny kind of bad. The one that transitions Lara to her death are the unacceptable game-breaking kind of bad, but we'll get to those as we go along. After the initial sequence of Von Croy's murder, the game begins in the Parisian backstreets. Really, this stage, the derelict apartment block, and the industrial rooftops all function as one big introductory evasion sequence from the police. They're very short stages involving 1 or 2 puzzles and 2 or 3 rooms not dissimilar from the reduced stage size from Tomb Raider Chronicles. This introduction highlights Lara's movement issues in a condensed space. You're in an alleyway, and the scripted camera makes a lot of jumps, making a lot of Lara's movements uncertain. If this looks like a nightmare to control, it's because it is. Due to the fuzzy nature of Lara's behavior around the constantly switching camera, coming to grips on what way is forwards or backwards becomes a long, ever-evolving guessing game. All you have to do is climb some ladders, search some cabinets, shimmy around corners, and you're done. Speedruns of this game are a thing, so I know there's something to be understood here with how Lara controls, but for the first timer the act of getting from point A to point B becomes its own challenge. The derelict apartment block is even simpler than the introductory section. You just run up some stairs and push a block to make an escape jump before toxic gas does you in. At least, that's what it should be, but we get our first look into the game's upgrade system. Now, in order to advance in the game, Lara needs to perform certain mundane actions before she has enough strength to advance. She's not strong enough to push this block, so ramming a door open somehow means she now has the lower body strength to pull it. If this puzzle seemed completely mentally defective to you, then you're really going to get a kick out of the future upgrade puzzles. These puzzles, if we can call them that, shouldn't exist. There's not a single instance where an area barred out by a strength upgrade allowed Lara to skip major sections of the level. It's just a weird way to make Lara do certain puzzles in a specific order. But instead of making some sense, you know, like having locked doors, we now just get instance after instance of Lara being a weak dumbass. There's zero harm in allowing Lara to move this block when she first finds it. There's no harm in letting her open doors she's too weak to ram initially. There's zero downside to letting her cross this gap first before getting the jump upgrade, because she still needs to explore the whole space thoroughly. This upgrade system is just a shallow replacement for the standard lock and key. In all honesty, the team should have just stuck with that approach. The Industrial Rooftops continues the action-oriented camera approach, meaning simply maneuvering Lara around is going to be a complete shit show. She just leaps over edges, shifts directions, and makes another simple section a nightmare to endure. There's another block on the floor needed to boost Lara's strength, and she uses it to physically evaporate herself from the game. This takes us to Margot Cavier's apartment and our first look into the game's branching dialogue. Since this game is supposed to be dark and edgy, I decided to make Lara a complete asshole through and through. This causes Margot to hide the item of our interest, Von Croy's journal. Of new mechanics introduced, I don't think the journal was leveraged as much as it could have been. It helps solve some puzzles in the mid-game, but its usefulness is arbitrary for the most part. I've already noted how this section was a nightmare to play, mainly because of Lara, and partly because the cutscene to game transition was insanely stupid. Margot exclaims that she'll never hand over Von Croy's journal to Lara and leaves the area, presumably with the notebook in hand. Then it turns out it's just in a cabinet drawer under a microwave. I initially thought I had to find a way out of the building before the poorly rendered cops tried to bust their way in. It wasn't until after half an hour of random searching and fighting the controls that I discovered Werner's notebook. This placement makes no sense, and it would have helped if the goal was a little more clear. After you find the notebook, you don't even escape out the window, you just walk out the front door regardless of how far the cops have advanced. It's not intuitive in the slightest. This leads us to a hub area of sorts in the Parisian ghetto, where we find some hobos who give us a local goal in the Café Metro. All we know at this point in the narrative is that Von Croy once worked for a man named Eckhard, and there are 5 Obscura paintings he was tracking. Now we're suddenly seeking a man named Bouchard. If you advance directly above the train to the main city, you'd have no fucking clue. This section is all about walking and talking. Talking to a tour guide. Talking to a prostitute. Talking to a Chinese man who couldn't be bothered with having an animated face. Talking to another asshole. This ends up with you being sent on a fetch quest to find this asshole's trinket he stored in a light fixture at a club. Why? Why did you put it there, you fucking degenerate? You can find a portion of Bouchard's hideout in the midst of all this in the sewer system, but Lara's too weak to open this door here. Just have it locked. The fetch quest takes us to the Serpent Rogue, where the buggy nature of the combat system finally shows itself. It's the funny kind of broken, so I personally don't mind it. This is a brief combat sequence leading into a brief platforming segment of some support beams. Since Lara no longer touts infinite ammo, it's more conservative and efficient to just use the new hand-to-hand combat system. You just mash action in front of a guy to beat his ass out of existence. You can shoot a few times to stun them for even better results. Does the combat look familiar to you, by the way? Maybe a little? Man, someone was jealous of successful games. This segment is where I discovered the PC function of quick saving, so you can better believe I began utilizing it after every jump. Nearly every single one. That's how uncertain platforming is in this game. Anyway, Lara rotates the light fixtures to find the man's doohickey in the broken fixture, which is at least telegraphed okay. We bring it back and he gives us the code to his ex-girlfriend's house since she can apparently lead us to this Bouchard character. We break into her front door and instead of questioning who the hell we are, she immediately begins talking about Bouchard. We can imagine that the asshole cashier called her in advance, but it's still a jarring way to kick off a cutscene. She basically just says Bouchard is near the church, so we leave out through the graveyard in the back. Lara finds another door she doesn't feel strong enough to open, so in order to pump herself up for that one, she opens the exact same door somewhere else. I'm not kidding. Then she breaks more public property, entering Bouchard's hideout. It's basically just a linear sewer, and the developers apparently felt that the walls were so poorly textured that we had to be told we could climb them. This happens at several other occasions, and it's not something I personally endorse. If the level design is so bad that you had to tell players to interact with something, that's your cue to step your game up. It's not exactly the best thing if a game developed 6 years earlier on last generation hardware could telegraph climbable surfaces better than your cutting edge title. The stage ends with Lara finding a man who appears to be zombifying or some shit, and finding Bouchard. Turns out she wanted to find Bouchard to get some firearms, like she did all those other times before.
Remember,
Fuck you. Never mind the fact that you already have 9mm protection, but he directs us to a man who will sell us some arms at a fair price. While we're at it, we're gonna deliver some passports that don't come into play again. We find the guy's house and the loading screen suggests that this man is going to be some kind of vendor. Things don't exactly play out that way, but I wondered if this was another instance of a scraps mechanic. After all, we have a hub world, Lara finds money around the levels, and she has a limited ammo count, meaning she could potentially have to see this guy when she ran dry. Lara never needs to use the money she finds at all, and we find the man dead. This guy was the perp, so you've likely just pieced together the monstrum mystery. Lara takes all the firepower she can get, ignoring the very obvious explosive charge in place, and escapes through the floor vent. Her plan is to break into the Louvre for an Obscura painting, so that's where we're headed next. The Louvre storm drain sees Lara suddenly swapping outfits, but this will be our first proper Tomb Raider stage. There's no stupid dialogue, the stage is a little larger, and the camera becomes less of an issue, though don't get me wrong, Lara still handles pretty bad. The stage once again utilizes the strength upgrades, despite the fact that the idea is still stupid. There's no harm in letting Lara flip these switches before turning a big fan. The player is still going to explore. You heard that order correctly as well. She needs to move the big fan before having the strength to pull some small switches. The platforming segments here hide the vertical ascension well. Lara has to climb up a fairly dented walkway, and she'll augment her climbing to the sudden changes in angles. She doesn't exclaim that she can climb this step either. The player has to arrive at this conclusion on their own, which is a good thing. The final puzzle, where Lara sets a charge on some tanks, isn't executed as well though. She notes that oil is present in the room. After placing the charge, she urges the player to dive into the water, or else. Diving here will get you killed, so you have to figure out that you need to swim to some pipes. If all of this liquid is oil, then swimming in this section shouldn't really make a difference in your survival. If it's water, then the physics here are also a little unclear. The charge is timed to blow up in the exact amount of time it takes to swim into the pipes, so the situation punishes you quite harshly, meaning you're going to be spending some time here in trial and error. The next stage is the Louvre Galleries, one of the standouts of the game. It utilizes stealth in a much better fashion than Chronicles ever could, and lends some practicality to Lara's new sneaking maneuvers. It just goes to show that with the right tools, these sorts of segments can be fine in a Tomb Raider game. The spaces in this level were generally more open, and it's the first time I found myself getting into the game since Lara's aggravating control hiccups weren't as prevalent. She did the occasional directional swap, but it wasn't anything too intrusive. Avoiding the lasers is some good critical thinking, the subsequent laser room takes more advantage of the new skill set, and even the following block puzzle fails to get in the way of smooth progress. See, Lara has to move the small block out of the way of a switch to deactivate some lasers around the Mona Lisa. Moving this block grants Lara a strength upgrade to move this bigger block. Since the switch easily catches your eye, players are likely going to solve the puzzle in this order anyway. There's no harm in letting Lara position the big block first, but players likely won't discover this arbitrary lock. The rooftop sequence requires some careful observation for advancement, and using the camera to find some door codes was novel for the scenario. It's this stage that made me really think about the real issues of Angel of Darkness. If Lara handled 100% perfectly, what you have is a novel little stealth stage with some action sequences in between. Design-wise, the stage is fine. And really, besides the part where you have to wander aimlessly talking to idiots, the platforming segments are par for the course in terms of Tomb Raider level design. Lara thus far has been the main source of dread, save the aforementioned design decisions. The Louvre would fit comfortably in Tomb Raider 2, where most of Lara's shenanigans took place in modern structures. The following stage, the archaeological dig, drastically reduces stage size. It's a single vault puzzle that utilizes the notebook preceded by some awkward jumps and surfaces. The ones she can climb on aren't exactly textured the best. I only made it to the vault because I took my own advice from Tomb Raider 3. It looked like I was supposed to be over there, so instead of trying a jank jump, I looked up and utilized the monkey swing. How Lara grips on this surface, I'll never know. Solving the vault puzzle brings Lara to the Tomb of the Ancients, which is just a vertical descent with obscurely placed drops. Heading down involves hopping over a fence that looks lethal. You'll miss the placement of the ledge in some instances, but quick saving trivializes the guesswork. Bats are now included because fighting the control scheme isn't enough effort, I suppose, and the bottom of the tomb houses Anthony, but you'll easily maneuver around him. Really, you just descend to the bottom, ascend halfway, and then descend again. The following stage, the Hall of Seasons, should really be a standout, but instead it's probably the worst repeat of St. Francis Folly the series has ever produced. Even worse than Tomb Raider 3's Lost City of Tinnis. It's 4 challenge areas that house the key. The keys unlock a latter part of the stage, eventually culminating in a boss fight. The art direction is nice and all that. There's a part where Lara gets sent to the Executioner's Chariot boss stage if she falls into a trap door, but the challenges here are some of the worst, if not the worst, the series has ever produced. Lara being at fault for 100% of the blame. I started things off with the fire section, which requires you to make several gaps with pinpoint accuracy. This was the single most frustrating sequence of gaps I have ever experienced in a Tomb Raider game, by far beating out Tomb Raider 1. And I'll be honest, I almost called it quits. You have to be perfect, which is insanely hard with Lara's movement quirks. After what must have been 50 plus deaths, I finally managed to get the first key and made my way to the stone symbol room. It gave me a lengthy cutscene, and then threw me on a falling platform I couldn't escape from. It didn't matter how fast I attempted to jump away, I always died. I looked around online for a solution only to find that this was a bug. This was the moment when Angel of Darkness surpassed Chronicles in level of brokenness, at least in terms of level design. I had to track another save and enter the room again several more times before the game allowed me to spawn in the correct spot. The save I had loaded already had the water and wind puzzle solved, so I had to track another save in order to play through those. The wind segment is maneuvering Lara over breezing stumps. Guess how that goes with Lara's movement quirks. The water puzzle is ironically the best of the bunch because Lara isn't allowed to walk on land for most of it. Maneuvering Lara underwater is a painless affair. She decided that having a rendered face was overrated in this section, but the relief from her dumbassery was enough for me not to care. Placing all the keys in her holders opens a door down in the Executioner's Chariot segment. Returning down there activates a lift in the main room where Lara makes another vertical ascension. The final climb up is needlessly hard due to the camera's unwillingness to show you where you're climbing. You need to pause on this hidden ledge here or Lara will fall down from exhaustion. The ending boss fight just sucks. There's a brief cutscene of Lara reading a tomb inscription before suddenly getting thrown into a hostile ghost fight. The words she read were, "Through the spirit of the keeper, behold the truth." This helps you a total of 0%. The thing can't be killed with weapons and you see glowing statues that lose their light when you approach them. I could not figure out what the game wanted from me. Since I was finding ammo on the floor, I knew shooting had to be a part of it. The statues also had to play some role. I tried steering the ghost into the glowing statues, shooting the statues, then mindlessly firing at the ghost praying for something to happen. Turns out you're supposed to shoot the ghost until it pauses. It pauses for like 3 seconds before resuming attack. In this 3-second window, you need to holster your weapon and approach a glowing statue where you'll be able to grab a painting. The timing of this is very strict, and I mean perfection levels of strict. If you shoot the ghost and approach the statue any slower than the 1.5 second window you get after holstering your weapon, the ghost reactivates and the statue light moves. I only got it because I randomly got the perfect lineup after evading the ghost for so long. The stars aligned in this placement. I really hope there's a more reliable way to make the ghost line up, but for the life of me, I can't seem to find it. The ghost, the controls, and the strict timing make this fight fucking terrible. After you kill it, Lara decides collision detection won't matter when making her exit. When she finally does exit, she returns through the Louvre with a limited supply of oxygen since the area is now flooded with toxic gas. I ran around finding a gas mask at the last moment. They're in plain sight, but Lara takes her sweet time searching through the cabinets. This mechanic was only slow before, but now it makes her look like a complete idiot. After heading back the way you came, nearing your escape, the asshole from the Foreign Legion, who's been like stalking you this entire time, manages to rob Lara Croft in the most sexual way possible. This man robs Lara Croft, the woman who has killed Atlantean gods, slayed a dragon, murdered a space spider thing, killed Set, the god of death, and stopped the Headless Horseman from killing her Irish priest friend. Not in that order. This one asshole and his Rasengan wind shuriken bullshit is enough to stop Lara Croft. Then he gets knocked out, and then Lara gets knocked out. She's left alone since she's being used to find the other paintings, but Naruto is taken away. Lara returns to Von Croy's apartment with Bouchard, and then he orders her execution by the cleaner. But his name should really be the Bullet Sponge. This stage is incredibly glitchy and game-breaking. One ammo clip basically supplied me with infinite pickups. Another section caused Lara to become stuck in place, making this 2 instances of a game-breaking bug. You just shoot the idiot and chase him out the door where we get another jarring gameplay to cutscene transition.
Is she taken care of yet? Hello. Is she dead yet? We have to get back to Prague.
Lara tracks her backstabbing friend to the Monstrum crime scene, effectively ending the Paris stages and beginning the Prague stages. Lara needs to speak to this reporter before heading inside the main facility to find Bouchard. Instead of killing him then and there, she handcuffs him to his chair and then enters his manor for more information on the Obscura paintings. The puzzle here is short, and Lara exits to find Bouchard has now been killed by exactly what he was afraid of. I forgot to mention in there that the villains have had their own fair share of cutscenes between some stages, basically explaining that they've tracked most of the paintings, meaning you're not on a globe-spanning treasure hunt this time around. Heading back to the journalist, Lara makes some kind of deal where she gets an access code to the next stage in exchange for a scoop on the Monstrum. During this conversation, they state that Lara is paying the man, but your monetary resources are never depleted for this conversation. The Straha Fortress is either a sneaking stage or an action stage depending on how the player wants to spin it. There's multiple ways to get in the base, which is a nice touch. There's a really jank block tower puzzle needed to increase Lara's strength to move 2 blocks stopped on top of each other, but the wide open spaces here make controlling Lara less of a frustrating endeavor. Those sections are nice, but the level isn't sparse of its cramped areas, making the controls a crapshoot at some points. The following bio-research facility begins with an old man spraying Lara with gas. You're Lara Croft, yet this asshole managed to give you the slip when you were actively interrogating him. The art direction here is at least novel, and the level design is about on par with one of the later stages of Tomb Raider 2. It's got the correct scale, and some of the ideas here, like the scattered card keys, call back to the Lost Valley. The upgrade puzzle here involves increasing Lara's maximum jumping distance by hopping over an average gap. The game also sees its third game-breaking bug with the inverted camera. It just decides that we're going to watch the improved breast physics from the front. I played out a puzzle sequence involving a tree completely backwards, thinking the next room would fix my issue, but that wasn't the case. Once again, I had to track a save in the same spot before I could carry on. The Sanitarium begins with Naruto trapping Lara in this container, so for this stage we're going to prove ourselves as the greatest Hokage. The stage goes all out with a survival horror angle and level design and enemy design. The missing ingredient here is the overall threat level. Naruto's taijutsu is too advanced for the asylum assholes, and beating them up seems to do the trick. To add on to that, Naruto's packing in an insane amount of heat, so he'll never opt to run away from combat. The control jank is present, and the puzzles are a little simplistic, but the atmosphere of the stage is on point, at least on par with Tomb Raider 3. The maximum containment area is just a sequence of combat sections while taking a page from Eternal Darkness. Since ammo isn't scarce, you'll just blast your way through any enemy that dares to challenge you. The creepy disfigured dog enemy that's been making appearances for the last few levels finally appears as a boss. Then you'll need to recall from an earlier conversation that this breed of enemy is immortal, so once you shoot it down, you need to use a blade in your inventory to kill it. But you won't really know Naruto has the magic kunai knife unless you check your inventory. He goes back and then releases Lara in another sexually charged cutscene so that they can split up enemy attention as they continue to infiltrate the base. You know, she may as well just change her name to Hinata. Resuming control of Hinata, we make our way into the aquatic research area, which is one of the less painful stages to play. It's wide and open, water is abundant, and the puzzles are on par with the mid stages of Tomb Raider 2. Lara even pays homage to that game by slapping on the diving outfit. After donning her new gear, she heads down to the Vault of Trophies, a segment that's also almost entirely underwater. The main puzzle here involves these men with swords and figuring out which two to put together. You can solve it with careful observation, so it's well designed. The issue is that the player may not find this air pocket in the room, nor may they find that they suddenly possess an underwater breathing device. Without it, the player's time underwater is too limited to think through the puzzle. The only way they'd make it is if they already knew the solution. Pushing the correct two statues together results in a transition to an underwater mansion, which is novel level design at least. The camera makes the corner shimming here a rough experience, and the upgrade system once again forces Lara to solve the room in a specific order. Swimming down another long shaft leads you to find Naruto and a giant monster. He insists that his woman with all the automatic weapons get to safety while he takes on the boss with the prototype pistol. This boss also sucks. It's more guesswork on what you should do. Shooting the face seemed to elicit a different visual spark than shooting the rest of the body, so I went with that. Successfully dodging hits also takes some getting used to since Naruto seems to handle more sluggishly than Lara. He can't sprint like she can, so you're gonna be hopping around to distance yourself from the beast. Repeatedly shooting it in the face didn't seem to do anything despite emptying 5 full clips into it, doing one shot at a time to avoid damage. It was by chance that I found shooting the side pods during a lengthy attack sequence further damaged the creature, so once I knew to wait for the attack, I went for the sides. Unfortunately, the auto-aim in the game proves to get in the way, as Naruto will opt to target a side pod he's already shot over the one he needs to shoot. The space where he'll actually target the new pods is narrow, so it's a test of your patience. After 45 minutes of this fight, another boss pops out, but I don't have fucking time for this shit. You better stop flying around and looking at me before I blast you, motherfucker! Drop dead, you bump! Oh. Well, there goes Lara's only real sexual prospect.
Now what's a man gotta do to get that sort of attention from you?
Be anime, I guess? The Lost Domain is just 3 poorly designed rooms, and the jump upgrade here is the main source of the blame. If you enter the ice room in front of you first, you'll find that traversing the halls and walls is too slow. So you have to pull a lever opening a timed door prior to a crossing. You can't quite jump across these gaps either, so naturally you head to the fire room expecting an upgrade. You find one alright. It's a jump upgrade alright, but this time the length of Lara's jump isn't increased. Instead, now she has an entirely new, unexplained move in her repertoire, the running long jump. I did not figure this out until the following stage. See, Lara can actually clear these gaps, but she refuses to hang on the ledge 90% of the time. Hitting the ledge first prior to grabbing increases your chances, but it's no guarantee. I had to complete this jumping sequence by running while the cutscene was playing out, and getting lucky twice with Lara gripping the edge. Then it turns out this likely would have been an easy sequence had the game told me of the new skill, you giant fuckhead. The game ends off on Eckhart's lab, which is a single puzzle room requiring Lara to gather 3 keys. One's in boiling water, one's in a rid cage, and the last one breaks the game. Once Lara enters this crawl space, she's physically unable to exit, at least on this version of the game. Looking it up, I've seen other players exit this space just fine, but here Lara refused to leave the hole, so that makes 4 game-breaking bugs. Once all the keys are in place, we finally get a shot at the asshole that's been killing everyone. You actually don't need to fire a single shot here, since hand-to-hand works when he places himself in the middle of the arena. But I liked mindlessly firing anyway. Ammo wasn't exactly scarce. You just avoid his attacks until he creates clones and sends them in the middle where you can either shoot or beat him up. You stab him with 3 kunai knives, killing him. Then suddenly that villain we've never met appears.
Remember me?
This boss fight is just a less grand version of the fight with Set. You pick up the Wind Rasengan Naruto Shuriken, activate a hand thing, then platform up the base before getting one last poor transition from gameplay to cutscene. Lara ends the plot to destroy the Jedi and kills off the immortal race for good. Then she takes the Shuriken as a prize. I guess its behavior hints that Naruto might still be alive, but seeing as how this game never got its planned sequel, he's dead to me. Lara walks out the door, and we're unceremoniously kicked back to the title screen. No credits, no epilogue. It's just kind of over. I should really hate this game, but honestly, I just feel kind of sorry for Angel of Darkness. At some rare moments you see glimpses of the game it could have been despite the severe cuts the team had to make. As I've stated many times throughout this video, Lara is the main cause of the game's problems. Sure, the game is buggy and broken in other areas, some bugs being entirely game-breaking, but the fact of the matter is a more satisfying Lara would have resulted in a much more tolerable game. If she played 100% correctly, the number of blunders would dramatically decrease to the point where the game would simply become unremarkable as opposed to entirely broken. There's nothing really special about the art direction or level design. Some people try to apologize for this game by saying that the atmosphere is the best of the classics, but it's really just some supernatural creatures and canted camera angles to give off a survival horror feel. The few tombs here are nothing special, and the levels mainly take place in modern facilities, which is fine by me personally, but this makes most of the level design uninspired. It never hits the creative heights of Tomb Raider 2, and the level of cohesion never hits the heights of The Last Revelation, which did a lot more with a lot less in terms of visuals. It's a broken game. It's just sad to see that it all stems from one thing the team had managed to get more or less correct from the start. After playing this, I can definitely say I'd take a Lara that handles worse with a game properly designed for her than a Lara with improved controls that can't function in the world around her. This version of Lara is easily my favorite of the numerous incarnations, and she definitely deserved a little more than what she got. This game effectively killed her, sending her to her grave and off to the heavens as an angel. Just not an angel of darkness. Good lord. Hi! It's over. It's finally over. It's over.